Thanks for jumping on, everybody. We will start going through the weather soon here. Just wanted to, just going to get this posted out on social media here. All right. Time to start streaming. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us here. Western Washington weather live storm update this Sunday evening. We've got a lot to talk about. That is for sure. So let's take a look at it. Let's get into it here. Feel free to ask any questions you've got in the chat. I will do my best to answer as many of them as I can. I can see already in the chat, Siskiyou says, protect us, mighty blue hole in Squim, the rain shadow there. Probably will. We'll take a look at that some more in a moment. Hey, Mark, welcome to the chat. Tons of runoff going into the Foss Waterway in downtown Tacoma. Makes sense. We had some pretty decent rain over the last 24 hours here. Let's take a look at actually 48-hour rain totals, because this is kind of going to play into what we're looking at in terms of our wind. So we can see here, these are 48-hour rain totals, so this is since that would be Friday evening. And you can see this atmospheric river has been giving us some decent rain. You can see 1 inch to 1.5 inches across the Seattle metro area down toward Olympia. Out on the coast, though, 2 to 4 inches. And then Kitsap Peninsula, about 1.5 inches there. Up in the Cascades here, you can see up to 5 inches. And so this has been pretty good so far, but we have a lot more rain to go. And so let's take a look at that here. Let me go and take a look at that real quick. Hold on just a second. All right. So let's take a look at what rain we've got coming in. So we're going to take a look at the European model in terms of rain this is through Tuesday. So you can see we've got a lot more rain coming here. Lowland's going to get about another inch. You can see 1.2 inches there in Seattle. 1.5 up by Mount Vernon. Kitsap Peninsula getting about 2 inches, and then areas from Olympia down toward Portland getting 1.5 to 2.5 more inches of rain. But I'm sure what we all want to talk about is the wind. So that's going to be the biggest thing, obviously, over the next 24 to 48 hours here. So let's start by taking a look at that wind that came through today. So this evening was a little bit windier than people were thinking. And you can see as we look at the radar, you see these showers that came through after our cold front that moved through earlier. We can, if we extend this radar out a little bit here, we can see that front moves off into eastern Washington, and then see the front moves through here this afternoon, then you get all these showers behind it. So, and you can see we still have some areas of showers moving through the area. We'll just keep this here so we can look at it over the live stream here. And you can see the wind gusts were pretty good across some of the area this afternoon. You can see 59 miles per hour in Astoria there, 51 miles an hour in Hoquiam, 49 in Shelton, and then we had some pretty good ones across the Puget Sound area. You can see 48 mile per hour peak gust at Boeing Field. I hit 39 miles an hour at my house here in Federal Way. Many of you know Michael Snyder of Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. He hit 55 miles per hour on his Tempest weather station. That is really significant because other stations around him only hit the upper 30s miles per hour there. So that was pretty significant. And then the most surprising wind gust of all, take a look at Payne Field in Everett. They're 63 miles per hour. That is just crazy. That's just amazing to see. And then you can see we've got 47 on Camano Island. And as we got further up north toward Bellingham there, you can see not as much wind, only 37 at Whidbey Island as well, usually a little bit stronger there. So this was mainly impacting areas from Everett southward, and it did bring some power outages, especially over on the Kitsap Peninsula. You can see 40 miles per hour. We zoom into Tacoma there. So, yeah, it was decent. It was a decent wind event that just pushed through here. And the forecasts did all right with this. The winds overperformed a tiny bit from some of the forecasts, but were pretty much right on. Let me catch up on the chat here. Hey, Paul, thanks for joining. You guys were watching orcas this afternoon. That's awesome. I saw your photos on the Orca Network group. Never let an atmospheric river keep us indoors. That's right. Here in the Pacific Northwest, even if it's raining a lot, we're still going outside. Unofficial Washington State wildfire aware. Top of my street lost power in Duval. 1 to 2,000 just lost power. Winds are still pretty strong up there. It's going to continue for a little bit. You can see these stations out here are not very well sighted, so it's hard to get an accurate wind reading, but you can see up to 41 in Kenmore and stuff there. So yeah, it makes sense that the winds are still going. When will the wind calm down tonight in Bothell? Sister-in-law getting hammered in Tulalip. Tulalip, that would make sense because that's near that 63 mile per hour gust we had at Payne Field there. This wind should calm down over the next couple hours here. You can see if we take a look at the European model, here we can go back to this evening and you can see it had those winds peaking around 6 p.m., 40 miles an hour across the area. That happened. And then as we go to about 8 p.m. there, you can see, some areas 30 to 40 miles per hour around Everett, and then that starts to calm down pretty much there. As we get to midnight, you can see 20 miles an hour across most of the area. Sydney says, haven't been on one of your lives since December when getting that train of windstorms. Hoping this one tomorrow is not so bad. It may be rivaling some of those, so we'll have to look at that pretty closely. This upcoming windstorm, depending on how it sets up, we could get some pretty strong winds across the region. And with all of the rain that's fallen, I've been talking about this in my daily videos, the ground is really saturated, and that makes it easier for trees to fall or get uprooted and stuff like that. So it's definitely something we have to watch very closely. Mark says we tried to get a nice walk in along downtown Tacoma waterfront this afternoon. The showers were too fast and we got wet. Yeah, that's that happened to a lot of people. I think these showers moved in pretty quickly. Brian says pretty lame winds in Olympia. Yeah, not too strong in Olympia this round, but tomorrow could definitely be much stronger. 36 at the Olympia airport, not all that significant. So let's take a look at that storm tomorrow. This is definitely going to be the thing that we're all watching here. So you can see as we go through the European model here, you can see we get a break in the rain this evening into, so from pretty much now into early Monday morning, we get just a few occasional showers, but you can see as we go into early Monday, this storm is deepening offshore. We get more rain moving into the area, mountain snow. Rain is heavy at times there Monday, and then take a look at how this storm moves right into the northwest tip of the Olympic Peninsula. Heavy rain, heavy mountain snow across western Washington into early Tuesday morning. Strong pressure gradient, going to bring strong winds. That is the overall synopsis. You can see how heavy some of that mountain snow is going to be early Tuesday morning. We'll definitely look at that in the live stream here. Brandon says trees down in Black Diamond tonight. Yeah, there was actually some thunderstorms out by Black Diamond. There were a couple of lightning strikes I got. I heard there were some lightning strikes out there. Timing for tomorrow's winds. Gonna mainly be, well, there's a couple rounds here, and we can actually take a look at this on the high-resolution rapid refresh model here. You can see winds ease tonight. Then as we go to about 10 a.m. tomorrow, we start to get some heavy showers moving in, and those could briefly have some really strong winds gusting 40 to 50 miles per hour, especially between noon and about 4 p.m. there, and then the storm starts to move in. We have a brief lull in the winds around 6 to 7 p.m., but then look at some of these gusts moving into the Puget Sound area by 8, 9, 10, 11 p.m. You're looking at 55 miles per hour in Seattle, 58 in Tacoma, 55 up in Everett there, and those strong 50-plus mile-an-hour winds could continue as long as 5 to 6 a.m., especially for areas from Seattle southward. You can see the signature of a convergence zone forming there Tuesday morning. And then take a look across parts of eastern Washington, parts of the Cascades, big winds there. Spokane, Pullman gusting 50 plus miles per hour. Look at the high resolution rapid refresh showing 68 miles per hour in Pullman at 8 a.m. tomorrow. So that's pretty significant. If we take a look at wind gust swath, you can see where the peak winds are going to be. And this storm, if this verifies here, we are going to be looking at power outages and some tree damage across western Washington. You can see 60 to 70 miles per hour along the Washington coast, especially from Ocean Shore southward. And then look at that 50 to 60 miles per hour across the Puget Sound area, especially from Everett southward, strongest winds there. And then Willamette Valley, parts of Portland, maybe 50 to 60 miles per hour as well. So this could be a pretty significant storm for some areas, and we're going to look at all the forecast models over the next little bit here as we go through the live stream. Let me catch up on the chat and see. Krista says, I've got quail eggs due to hatch in my classroom tomorrow and Tuesday. Really hoping the power at school can hold on. Yeah, we were definitely going to have some power outages, especially with how saturated the ground is, making it easier for trees to give way. Depending on the strength of the storm, they could be more widespread power outages, or we could just be looking at a typical sporadic power outage event. But if something like this solution verifies, you're definitely going to be looking at widespread power outages, probably at least 100,000 across western Washington. Let's see. Mark Skelton, how bad are winds going to be for southern BC near Nanaimo? Not bad. The southern BC is going to be pretty sheltered from this. You can see only 35 miles an hour. Vancouver, 50 miles per hour. Victoria, up toward Nanaimo, 40 to 50 miles per hour. If you put that into kilometers per hour there, you can see 60 to 70 kilometers per hour. So not too significant for parts of Vancouver Island and the lower mainland there. How about East Woodinville and Duval there? About the same timing, going to be Monday into Monday evening into early Tuesday morning, and then those earlier potential winds with the strong cells moving through Monday afternoon. Luke asks, will it be worse than the bomb cyclone? That's a good question, and overall I would say no, because the bomb cyclone was such a kind of an odd event that really caused some very strong enhanced winds in very small areas, that when we get those winds through these certain areas, through these gaps in the terrain, you got these really, really strong 50 to 60, 70 mile an hour winds in the eastern lowlands, and those easterly winds extended out into the Puget Sound metro areas there. Something like that is not happening. This is a more traditional southerly windstorm, but anytime you're looking at winds of 50 to 60 miles per hour in the lowlands, you could definitely have some significant impacts as far as power outages. But I'm not expecting the type of caliber damage we had with the bomb cyclone, where you're looking at 500,000 outages or something like that. Actually, I think it was 600,000 with the bomb cyclone. So I don't think that is going to be what is occurring with this storm. Some gusts pushing 50 miles per hour tonight in Mill Creek. Yeah, we had some locally enhanced winds and a few minutes of some of those strongest winds. There were some pretty strong gusts at my house here in Federal Way, too. Roland Connor, why are winds not as bad near the BC-Washington border tomorrow night? That is because of where the storm is coming in. The low center is going to be moving kind of across the Strait of Juan de Fuca, southern Vancouver Island, and up into British Columbia. And usually the closer you are to the actual low center, the lesser the winds are going to be, because the pressure gradient isn't strong over you. So you can kind of see that here on the European model. Let's look here. So if we take a look at that pressure gradient, we can zoom in a little bit. So you can see, Roland there, that low pressure kind of moves right over areas from Nia Bay out toward Victoria, the San Juans, and over Bellingham. And because there's not a super strong pressure gradient right above you, it's difficult to get those strong winds. Usually when we get low pressure systems moving in over central Vancouver Island, that strongest pressure gradient is over Whatcom and San Juan counties, Whidbey Island, and stuff like that. But with this storm, with that low pressure moving right over some of those areas, the strongest winds are going to be cast to the south of it. Let me catch up here. Always heard Euro is the best for snow and is her best for wind. It depends. The Euro and the HER have been doing all right with these winds. The NAM typically overdoes it, but has sometimes been good. You just kind of got to look at them all and kind of see which one looks a little bit too high and you can throw it out, or which one looks pretty accurate. Thank you for tuning in, Mark. Always great to have you on. Paul says on over/under for power outages 100K. I'll take under. Yeah, it would be nice if we don't get over 100,000. Mark Skelton asks, when are the winds starting tomorrow? Up in BC, it's going to be an evening thing. We can take a look at the European models forecasts for the winds as well. So European model. So you can see as we go through tonight, those winds calm down in the European model. But as we go into Monday morning, you can see we get some wind starting on the coast. European model with its lower resolution doesn't pick up the potential strong winds and any thunderstorms. But as we go into about 7 p.m. there, you can see those strong winds gusting 60 plus along the coast. And then as we go to about 9 to 10 p.m., you get these winds 40 to 50 miles per hour across the lowlands, and then we go toward midnight, 1, 2, 3 a.m., you get those strong winds across the lowlands of western Washington, and it looks like peak winds for the Strait of Georgia and Nanaimo are going to be from Monday night into very early Tuesday morning, but not lasting as long as some other locations. You can see on the European model, you get winds gusting 40 miles an hour in Seattle all the way until, wow, that lasts a lot longer than I thought, all the way until 3 p.m. on Tuesday. If we take a look at peak winds across the region on the European model, you can see gusts of 50 to 55 miles per hour across the Seattle metro area. It actually shows a bit of a westerly surge down the Strait of Juan de Fuca toward Whidbey Island there. And then you can see along the coast those really strong gusts, especially from about central Grays Harbor County, Ocean Shores down the Oregon coast. If you're looking for the strongest winds in Washington with this storm, likely going to be the Long Beach Peninsula, Cape Disappointment, out toward Astoria, some of the Oregon coast as well. But strongest winds in Washington likely going to be in Pacific County there, maybe toward Westport, and of course in some of the mountains. But I don't really count that. So yeah, tonight is just the appetizer. I see that in the chat. Yeah, tonight was just kind of a lesser round of winds, and then we get this much stronger round with this strong system tomorrow. So we can also take a look. There's some more impacts with this that are not just wind. If we take a look at total mountain snow, the interesting thing that's going to happen is we're going to bring down the snow level. Obviously, with the atmospheric river, that snow level's been really high, up toward 7,000 feet or so. You got highs in the 40s in the mountains and stuff like that. So as this next storm moves in, it's a little bit colder, so it's going to pull down those snow levels. And you can see there's huge snow totals potentially through Tuesday for some of the mountains. You're looking at near 30 inches for Stevens and White Passes. Snoqualmie Pass, this forecast shows 2 feet, but that's too high because it's not counting in the temperatures. So we can take a look at the National Weather Service. Actually, let's take a look at the National Weather Service in Spokane. They had a good graphic up about this snow here. So you can see that this graphic, which we can open here, shows 12 to 18 inches at Stevens Pass. Likely a little bit more than that is possible, but then take a look down towards Snoqualmie Pass here. You can see only like 1 to 2 inches, 2 to 3 inches at Blewett Pass. And that would be because it's a little bit too warm still. If we can look at the point forecast for Snoqualmie Pass, and this will kind of tell us why it's going to be a little bit too warm for snow there. You can see Snoqualmie Pass, Monday's highs 39 degrees, only gets to 34 Monday night, so there may not be any snow up at Snoqualmie Pass, but maybe 1 to 3 inches or so. But if we take a look at Stevens Pass, we'll see a different story. So here we can look at Stevens Pass, and you can see there it gets down to 32, only a high of 33 on Tuesday. So really heavy, wet snow. You can see 5 to 9 inches of snow Monday night, 5 to 9 inches of snow Tuesday, 12 to 18 inches total. So pretty significant snow there for the higher passes. I would put that snow level. We can take a look at it in the zone forecast. You can see Snow level decreasing to 4,000 feet after midnight, near 3,500 feet tomorrow, increasing up to 4,500 feet, and then going back down to 3,500 feet as that heavier snow moves in Monday night into early Tuesday morning. And so that shows you why it's not going to be snowing much at Snoqualmie Pass, because Snoqualmie Pass is only at 3,000 feet. Sydney says, I heard something about this next windstorm filling and decaying rapidly. Could that make the winds not as bad? Yes, and actually it's kind of interesting. The winds are not going to be as bad as they could be. They could be much worse. So you can see the best way to look at this, the storm is offshore here Monday afternoon, about parallel with the Columbia River outlet there. And then as we go into the evening hours, the storm goes from 978 millibars to 982 to 987, 995 by the time it goes over the strait. So it's weakening rapidly. But that doesn't mean it's not going to cast a big pressure gradient. If we take a look at this same thing on the NAM model, you can see it a little bit better here. So you can see offshore it has it at 981, weakens to 982, 985, 987, and makes landfall at 988. But you still have a strong pressure gradient up the Puget Sound lowlands, up the Willamette Valley, and of course on the coast. So just because the storm is weakening doesn't mean that it's going to have like no winds, or those winds are going to be lesser than the forecasts are showing. The forecasts are showing these winds of 50 to 55, maybe 60 miles per hour across parts of western Washington and Oregon, despite the storm weakening, which kind of shows that we're being spared. If this storm was strengthening while it was moving inland, we'd be talking about a pretty significant event here. Hey, Puget Sound Storm Watch. Thank you, Anthony. If you guys haven't seen Puget Sound Storm Watch on Facebook, go check him out. Pretty cool page there. Got a lot of followers. Got some good weather content. Especially if you're down here in the Central Sound. So be sure to go check out Puget Sound Storm Watch on Facebook there. Sam says, just finding this channel. New one to add to my list. Thank you very much. And for those of you who are watching right now, be sure to like this video. Be sure to subscribe to Western Washington Weather. I've just passed 1,000 subscribers in the past months here, so that's been pretty exciting. Another thing to look at here is, if you guys have not heard of it, the Northwest Avalanche Center, part of the National Forest Service, and this is a pretty nice thing to see here. This is basically a local Pacific Northwest thing that is dedicated to just giving avalanche forecasts for the Cascades and for the Olympics as well, but not right now. So you can see the Cascades, we're looking at Snoqualmie Pass, you can see considerable avalanche danger. You can see same at Stevens Pass, Mount Hood, high avalanche danger there. Travel in avalanche terrain not recommended. So basically what's happening here, and the reason we're looking at this, so if you click Snoqualmie Pass, it's going to show us the forecast here. And what's going on is that, so here they have this forecast. The atmospheric river event has ended, but we're not out of the storm track. Don't overlook the amount of liquid water soaking our snowpack. Unpredictable wet avalanches can occur naturally, so consider avoiding avalanche terrain until this stormy period wraps up. So kind of what we're looking at is that when you have a lot of heavy rain falling on top of a snowpack, it makes the snowpack very unstable, and that can obviously cause big avalanches. So you can see here that they show this danger scale, and we can take a look at this. That natural avalanches are possible, human triggered avalanches are likely. So it's very important that if you see these kind of forecasts for the backcountry, to not go out exploring, because it's not safe. And whenever really there's an avalanche warning, you don't want to be out there, because it can really just be quite dangerous, and you don't want to put yourself and first responders in a situation where they have to go rescue you and stuff like that. It's not worth it. So let's take a look at some other forecasts for this storm. We were looking at the NAM model here, and you can see how it has a decent storm moving in and a big pressure gradient across western Washington with some big pressure rises. You can see up to a 4 millibar pressure rise for Seattle in just about an hour. That's pretty significant, and that's why the NAM is showing some of the strongest winds of any forecast here, showing winds gusting up to 65 miles per hour for areas from Salem, Oregon, up through Everett, with gusts of 50 to 55 from Everett northward. And then take a look at these gusts, 70 miles an hour in Astoria, near Hoquiam, Ocean Shores there. This forecast is usually on the high side. It is usually a little bit too high for winds across western Washington, but the fact that this is even showing up does show that there is some high-end potential with this storm. If it comes in a little bit stronger than predicted, or we have a little bit stronger of a pressure gradient than we have expected. So just interesting to see a high-end forecast like this. A more reliable forecast would be the high-resolution rapid refresh model here. And you can see, as we look at the 0Z run of that, it shows those peak winds of 50 to 55 miles per hour, maybe up towards 60 miles an hour for some localized places in Puget Sound, with those enhanced winds from Ocean Shores down the Oregon coast. But there's something else to look at here too, and it's not just that we have wind and rain, but we also have a chance of thunderstorms tomorrow. And so if we look at that, you can see it did pick up the thunderstorm potential across some of the Cascades tonight. We had a few lightning strikes outside of Black Diamond and about Enumclaw, some areas like that. There were some brief lightning strikes out there and a couple of strong showers. But as we go into Monday there, you can see that, especially as we go into the afternoon hours there, here, let me go back to this one. As we go through those afternoon hours, you can see 1 to 2 p.m., big lightning potential there for some of the coast. This is most likely going to be over some of the mountains. And you can see this forecast does show 5 p.m. or so some decent lightning potential over parts of the Cascades, and then that kind of diminishes as we go into the night there. A good way to look at this would be if we zoom in to Washington, and then we can look at the simulated weather radar. So this basically shows you what the weather radar could look like as we go through the day tomorrow. So as you can see, we get a nice break across western Washington as we go through about 6 to 7 a.m. there. But as we get to 8 to 9 a.m., we got a band of heavy rain that moves through western Washington. But as we get to about noon, it turns showery, and look at how strong some of these showers are. You get some big segments of strong showers, potential thunderstorms moving through the metro area around 1 to 2 p.m. Look at that band moving into the mountains. And then more convective showers behind it toward 4 to 5, maybe 6 p.m. before the main storm starts to move into the area with more bands of heavy rain. And if we look at the winds during this time, so you can see these winds gusting 40 to 45, maybe 50 miles an hour with some of these heavy bands. Sometimes you get some outflow winds out ahead of those thunderstorms, something like that. And this is kind of what we're looking at here, is that like when we stop this at about 2 p.m. there, you can see winds gusting 41 miles per hour in Seattle as we get some of these strong thunderstorms moving through. And these are also going to be bringing a lot of rain. So you can see as we play this out, we can take a look at the rain totals all the way through Tuesday morning. And take a look at that. You're looking at another inch or so across the Puget Sound area, about 2-3 inches, maybe more in some of the mountains. But some of that will be falling as snow as the snow level decreases. So this is definitely pretty interesting because it's going to be a really active weather day tomorrow, because we're going to start with heavy rain, then we have the chance of thunderstorms and strong winds, maybe some small hail in those thunderstorms, and then we wait a couple hours and we have those big winds moving in. So let me catch up on the chat here. Power flickered 2 more times in Duval. Thought the appetizer ended. It is calming down for most of the area. We should calm fully over the next, let's say, hour or two here. Driving through that for a 3 p.m. appointment in Mill Creek. Yeah, there could be some. That's a good thing to point out. We could have some pretty challenging driving conditions at times, not only with the heavy snow across the passes, but with some of this heavy rain. I mean, look at some of these segments moving through. These are not the best driving conditions. What happens in this is you get a ton of standing water. Sometimes you get hail accumulating on the roads. That's not super likely. But then you get this also driven by really strong winds, and it can just slow things down a lot, and it can be pretty difficult to drive in some of those conditions. Because you can also look here at 1 hour precipitation totals, and you can see some of those showers are pretty strong. If you look towards 6 hour precipitation totals as we go into here. Let's take a look at 6 hour precipitation totals. Some of these heavy showers, you're getting a half inch or more of rain in 6 hours. And that band of heavy rain as the main winds move through. So again, all the rain we keep getting makes those soils more saturated and allows for that greater potential of falling trees. But I know I have some viewers on the coast, so I don't want to leave you guys out. We just keep adding to the threats here with the weather. So as we go into Monday evening, take a look at these waves that are going to be hitting the Washington and Oregon coast, especially around Long Beach and Westport, and then up toward Ocean Shores. This pink shows maximum waves of 45 to 50 feet. Significant wave height. You can see that we can look at the direction of the swells as well. You can see that the average waves, you're looking at 20 to 30 foot waves across the Washington coast. And we do have a high surf advisory up, I believe, and we can take a look at this. There it is. National Weather Service Seattle. You can see waves of 18 to 24 feet in the surf zone for the north and central coast. National Weather Service Portland is going... got all their guns blazing here. Breakers up to 32 feet for the southern Washington coast and the northern Oregon coast. Just huge waves. This is in effect from 4 p.m. Monday to 4 p.m. Tuesday. So there's going to be some pretty big waves up there on the coast, especially southern Washington coast and northern Oregon coast, in addition to tidal overflow flooding, because we have some low pressure moving. This windstorm is going to have some low pressure, so you're going to have tidal overflow, you're going to have huge waves, you're going to have strong winds. If you're in a place vulnerable to beach erosion, be very careful about this. I wonder if there'll be any rotating cells around tomorrow. Question in the chat there. Yeah, we can take a look at that too. There is definitely some potential significant tornado parameter. This is basically, we look at wind shear and we can see if there is a potential for any tornadic or just rotating storms. It's not necessarily going to be, you're not really looking at a big chance for like tornadoes, but you can see the potential is there for rotating storms around the Tri-Cities here out toward Walla Walla, and then also here down in southwest Washington. You can see around Clark County and out toward parts of Lewis County and Cowlitz County as well. If we look at the Cape here, you can see amount of convective available potential energy. That's basically how much juice is there for thunderstorms across the region. And you can see these are pretty good Cape numbers here, 300 to 400, maybe up toward 500 for parts of western Washington. And take a look at out toward the Tri-Cities there. Look at that, 800,000. So, yeah, there's definitely a chance of thunderstorms. And, yes, some of those could be rotating. If we look at the simulated radar around this time, you can see, well, look at that around Pasco, big thunderstorm potential there out toward Portland and Kelso and all that. You can see around the time we got these strong segments moving through the Puget Sound area, 2-3 p.m. there. Look at some of this around 1 p.m. for parts of Clark and Cowlitz counties there. So there's definitely a chance of rotating cells. You know, in a setup like this where you've got just a lot of stuff going on at the same time, there's usually at least one cell that does rotate a little bit. And this does remind me, let me take a look at the current radar, see what we got going on. You can see some more areas of showers moving toward western Washington, moving into the metro area there, out toward Olympia. Let's take a look at the coastal radar. We can see if we get a better view of that. Yeah, you can see some lines of showers here down toward Olympia, out toward Elma and Raymond there, but that's not all that impactful, just some brief wind-driven rain at times there. So we are really starting to calm down for the night here, but the weather action is only just beginning. So let me catch up on the chat there. Remember, if you guys got any questions at all, be sure to ask them here in the chat. Let's see. We can take a look at some more forecasts for the wind here. The high-resolution Canadian model has just finished running, and you can see it's really showing. That's pretty crazy. Let's zoom out so we can see why it's showing gusts up to 80 miles an hour in Long Beach. Shout out to everyone in Long Beach, by the way. You guys have gotten a lot of wind over the past couple days. Cape Disappointment hit 68 miles an hour yesterday, got some big winds down there today, and you're going to have some really big winds tomorrow. This is the high-resolution Canadian model. We're looking at this storm Monday morning. It's moving up, strengthening, and then it moves, it kind of stalls out right there on the coast. You get the pressure gradient still across the lowlands into early Tuesday morning, but you get a huge pressure gradient along the Washington coast, and that would be Washington and Oregon coast there. You see that strong pressure gradient along the Washington and Oregon coast there. That would be what's causing those big winds, and then you see some big pressure rises across the interior into Tuesday morning. That's what will be causing some big winds on the Canadian model there. So take a look here at peak winds through midday Tuesday on the Canadian model, and I would say this is probably overdone. I don't think Long Beach is going to be hitting 80 miles per hour up toward Ocean Park in Astoria there. It's possible. It's a slight chance, but it's definitely possible. You can see the Canadian model showing up the Puget Sound lowlands gusts of 50 to 55 miles per hour, maybe 60 miles per hour from Everett up toward Whidbey Island and the San Juans. But again, this is an outlier in showing these strong winds this far north, up to 55 in Bellingham there. We can take a look at a little bit more reliable of a forecast here in the high-resolution rapid refresh for pull this all the way out here, and you can see our more reliable solution shows winds gusting 50 to 55, maybe up towards 60 for some of the areas from Everett southward, 45 to 55 Everett north, and then on the coast there you can see 63 in Hoquiam, 70 for Ocean Shores. But that's nothing to sneeze at. Those are some huge winds. Let's see. Potential for school cancellations tomorrow and Tuesday. Not tomorrow, I don't think, but if there's a lot of power outages, you may get some individual school cancellations on Tuesday. I wouldn't be thinking like district-wide cancellations unless there's a lot of damage from some of these storms. Kim says 2 intense squalls came through eastern Whatcom County. Did you catch the wind gusts earlier? I got some wind gusts down here in Federal Way. We can try to play this radar back and see if we can see any of those strong cells that moved through Whatcom County. You can see as we go through 6 p.m. here. Here. So we go through 6 p.m. You can see some of those heavy cells across eastern Whatcom County there around, that'll be like 6:30. See that one just south of the Canadian border out by Linden there. That's a pretty strong cell there. Wow, that one really got pretty strong as it went into Canada there. Yeah, I picked up, we see those on the radar there. Most people got some decent winds this evening. You take a look again. I showed this earlier, but Michael Snyder, you guys know him, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch, friend of mine there. He got 55 miles per hour on his Tempest weather station, 41 miles per hour on another weather station that he has there, the Davis one there. So you can see, but 55 miles per hour, that's really significant there on the Tempest weather station. So yeah. Let's see, unofficial Washington State wildfire. Where do you think there's a chance for strong enough winds to close Bellevue College on Tuesday? You'd have to have a big power outage or something like that. I mean, it's possible. If you get some of these 55 miles an hour, it will definitely cause power outages. If there are a lot of schools that lose power, then there will definitely be school cancellations, and it could be kind of messy with... You're looking at like individual schools within a district canceling and not just like a full-on cancellation like snow. So, that will be interesting to see if we do get some school cancellations. I would say that's most likely if there's some heavily wooded areas that get some big wind gusts. The Farming Florist, Writing Grace, welcome. Grit and Grace, welcome to the chat. Kim says 6:30, that was the time of the squall, heavy rain, and some big gusts. Let's see if we picked up any gusts up here in Whatcom County. I doubt that those showed up too much. 27, yeah, it's probably stronger than that, probably more toward 30, 40 miles an hour. But again, if you guys are just joining on here, we had some big gusts across Seattle here with this wind event. You had 48 miles an hour at Boeing Field, 47 there. That's the University of Washington. So anyone there, and this weather station, I believe, is on top of the Atmospheric Sciences building at the UW there. And 47 miles per hour, that's pretty strong at the UW station. It looks like it's stopped recording when it got that gust. Let's see if that's what happened. Yeah, that was the last. It was the last update from it. It looks like it went offline after 7 p.m. there when it recorded 47 miles an hour. I'll have to ask somebody up there about that. And you can see some other places, some of these ridges above Snoqualmie Pass, their Alpental Summit, currently, this is the 7 p.m. update, was gusting to 77 miles an hour, 84 miles per hour peak gust. And you can see that Narrows Bridge also 40 miles per hour, 49 in Shelton. That's actually the strongest in the lowlands. So that was the peak. Shelton Airport. Browns Point in Tacoma, a pretty windy spot, gusted to 42 miles an hour. So, and we did have about 7,000 outages with PSE at its peak. It's gone down to about 6,000 or so last time I checked. But this was a brief round of wind that lasted only like 2 hours, and we got 7,000 power outages. So you get a much stronger wind event tomorrow that's going to last much longer, and you're going to have more power outages. So let's look at weather alerts, because this is something important to know. So this is the National Weather Service Seattle site, and you can see this. We got the high wind warning along the coast from the Oregon coast all the way up through to Neah Bay. Wind advisories, this tan color that is for the entirety of the lowlands out toward the strait there. And then the pink is the winter storm warning for the Cascades. So we can look at each of these alerts here. A high wind warning, winter storm warning, wind advisory. Start with that winter storm warning. So you can see for, we're looking at Stevens Pass, Mount Baker, Skykomish, all of those areas. Heavy snow expected at elevations at or above 4,000 feet with total snow accumulations of 12 to 18 inches. Could be more than that as well. Some of the forecast models are showing higher than 12 to 18 inches from 10 a.m. Monday to 4 p.m. Tuesday. Travel could be very difficult, and you get some gusty winds in there. Could bring down tree branches with that heavy snow and could cause some blowing snow. So definitely some interesting driving conditions. In the southern Cascades as well, a little bit higher amounts of snow. This includes Paradise and White Pass, Crystal Mountain Ski Area, parts of Mount Rainier National Park, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., 10 a.m. Monday to 4 p.m. Tuesday. Heavy snow above 4,000 feet, 12 to 24 inches there. So very strong winds could cause extensive tree damage. That's some pretty strong wording there from National Weather Service Seattle for the southern and central Cascades of Pierce and Lewis counties there. So heads up if you're in those areas. Now looking at the high wind warning. This is not in effect for all areas. This is in effect for the north and central coast of Washington, with winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour from 1 p.m. Monday to 7 a.m. Tuesday. You could change that timing maybe a little bit, especially for inland areas. And then taking a look here at the forecast for National Weather Service Portland. This is for the southern Washington coast, the coast range of Washington and Oregon, and the north and central Oregon coast. You can see gusts up to 60 to 65 miles per hour with higher gusts at beaches and headlands and the higher terrain. Gusts of 70 miles an hour are not at all out of the question for places like Long Beach, all the way down toward Newport, Oregon, and even further south than that. So many headland areas and beaches are prone and vulnerable to very strong wind gusts that may pose a safety hazard for individuals. That's some pretty strong wording there in the high wind warning. And then taking a look at the wind advisory, this is in effect for a huge portion of the area, basically the entirety of western Washington that's not covered by that high wind warning. And you can see 1 p.m. Monday to 7 a.m. Tuesday. You could probably extend that a little bit longer for some localized areas. With gusts of 45 to 50 miles per hour, we could argue that 55 is possible as well. And then Portland, you're looking at National Weather Service Portland. This is for Southwest Washington and parts of the Portland metro area. Gusts up to 45 miles per hour expected. So let's close these weather alerts up here. Keep the National Weather Service Seattle site open. So good reminder here, store or secure loose items before strong winds, patio furniture, sports equipment, trash cans, trampolines, all that kind of stuff. Be sure to secure it. You don't want this happening in your yard or having it blow into your neighbor's yard or something like that. If you got garbage cans or something out like that, bring those in, because the last thing you want is garbage all over your street. Let me look at the chat here. Do you think National Weather Service will put out a warning? If you're talking about high wind warning, probably not for the interior unless the forecast really uptrend. Chances for flooding in Issaquah, the creek seems to be rising. Issaquah Creek does flood sometimes. We can look at the flooding potential right now. A lot of rivers are at bank full or are just barely into flood stage. And let's take a look at those right now. So, you see that flood watch is in effect for a lot of the area. We got, let me look at Issaquah Creek right here. So, Issaquah Creek, you can see it is rising, and it's risen. It was about 4.9 feet a couple days ago, and we're looking at 6 feet now. So it's gone up at least a foot, but we're not at flood stage yet. Flood stage is... action stage is 1.3 CFS. We're at 462. So it's not in flood stage yet. You can see Snoqualmie Falls there. The Snoqualmie River got into bank full stage earlier today and has since started to recede. Snoqualmie River at Carnation, as we go down the Snoqualmie Valley there, about midway into bank full stage, and it looks like it has crested and is now starting to recede. The river that floods the most in western Washington, the Skokomish River near Potlatch outside of Shelton there, is like having a double crest here. You can see it reached moderate flood stage earlier today, has dropped back down into minor flood stage, and now is going back up into moderate flood stage there. This river floods all the time, and that is because of a combination of logging and hydroelectric dams that have caused the river to be very shallow and not have much room between not flooding and flooding. So this river just, you can see it's going to be above bank full stage for like the next week, and it's just going to stay there. It's going to go back up into moderate flood stage on Tuesday. So, and one more thing, you can see the Cedar River in Renton is rising. So latest observation was 1:30 a.m. this morning, and it was near action stage. So you may get, it looks like the Cedar River in Renton's going to be at bank full there for the next couple days, and then we'll start receding. Let me catch up in the chat here. Charge battery packs. Yeah, charge everything you got, with this... Charge everything you got with this storm coming in: phones, tablets, computers, laptops, flashlights, lanterns, anything like that. You want to make sure that if there is a power outage, you're prepared for it. Brandon says, just lost power, I had to kick on the generator. David says, don't have to worry about power, have an off-grid power system. Now, that's living right there, because then you're totally prepared for all this weather because you're already off the grid. More rain. A says more rain expected within Monday and Tuesday. We'll be monitoring that. February 2020, this creek got to 12 feet. February 2020, it's funny that you mentioned that. I was actually talking about that event with some friends this morning. I went out to Snoqualmie Falls in that event, February 2020, and then some of the other rivers to the north there. And I've never seen Snoqualmie Falls so big as it was in February 2020. I have actually, the photo is next to me here on my wall because it's so cool. That I saw Snoqualmie Falls in moderate flood stage. If anyone in this chat has ever seen Snoqualmie Falls in flood stage, it's a sight to see, that is for sure. You got to go do that at least once if you live in the Pacific Northwest. So overall, not nearly as bad as it could be with flooding with this atmospheric river. I mean, we have seen obviously much worse over the last few years. If you live in Whatcom County, you know what I mean. If you live along the Snoqualmie River, you know what I'm talking about there. We've seen some big flooding, and we've gotten pretty lucky over the past couple years to not have anything as big as like the huge floods of 2021 and to a lesser extent 2022. So yeah, there we go, talking about flooding. Another thing we can look at here is the European model ensembles to see how much ensemble agreement there is about strong winds. And I haven't actually looked at this recently. So let's take a look at the European model ensemble. We're looking at SeaTac Airport. You can see the ensemble mean is over 40 miles per hour, more toward 45, and a decent number of ensemble members are showing winds gusting up to 50 miles per hour or over 50 miles per hour there for SeaTac. We can go to some other stations and see if it's looking stronger. Here's Astoria. You can see that ensemble mean is 50, 55 miles per hour, multiple members showing gusts over 60 miles per hour. So the ensemble agreement is pretty good. At this point, we're looking less at the European model ensembles and more at the different forecast models individually and just seeing what they're showing. So let me take a look at the radar here. You can see we got more bands of showers starting to move into the area. Those will probably continue over the next few hours. So another thing that's interesting to do is to compare the forecast models. So let's take a look at the NAM model, and then we can compare it to the high resolution rapid refresh. Here we go. Let's do this, and then we can compare. So you can see where these differ a little bit. The NAM is likely too strong for Seattle and Portland, with showing gusts of 60 to 65 miles an hour. That's most likely not going to happen. But take a look at the high resolution rapid refresh here on the right, and you can see those gusts of 50 to 55 miles per hour, with a few isolated locations hitting 60 miles per hour. So since we've been talking about that high resolution rapid refresh model, there's also a 15-minute version that this basically shows wind gusts. It instead of showing things every hour, it shows it every 15 minutes. It's not yet in range for the winds, except they do hit this ends at 10 a.m. So you can see those winds starting to hit the coast, and you can see the rain band. Let's look at this. We might have a pretty rainy commute tomorrow for some of the area. So as we get to 5:30 a.m., we go to about 6 a.m. You can see heavy rain over Portland. And then as we go up toward Kelso and Olympia, you can see as we get to 8 a.m., heavy rain in Olympia. 8:45, that starts to move toward Tacoma and then Seattle. You can see that heavy rain band pushing into Everett by the time we get to 10 a.m. And then you see all these showers behind it where we have that potential for thunderstorms. We can continue this here too. 11, 12, you can see by the time we get to noon, we got big thunderstorm cells potentially. They're not going to be necessarily thunderstorms. That's not guaranteed. Heavy rain with potential small hail and stuff like that regardless. Puget Sound Stormwatch says waiting patiently for the 0Z Euro to drop. Yeah, the 0Z Euro is going to be interesting to see what that says. That will start running in just under an hour here, about 9:15. If you guys want, we can stay on until then, and we can just take a look at watch the 0Z Euro run live. But and if you're wondering what 0Z means, like what are we talking about here? This is Zulu time, UTC time. It's a international way of telling time that is based off the Greenwich Mean Time, which is, you're looking at the prime meridian of Earth there. We can take a look at it here. What is Zulu time? So what is the meaning of Zulu time? Zulu time is the military name of Universal Time Coordinated, UTC, and Greenwich Mean Time, GMT. It is a standard time, sometimes referred to as a geographically fixed time across all time zones. This means while it may be 4 p.m. in somewhere like Atlanta, but 3 p.m. in Fort Worth, it's 21Z in both time zones. So that kind of describes what that is, and then you can see every 6 hours you get a new run of the forecast models. So 0Z is the next European model run. And again, something that we can look at to, we've been talking a lot about these heavy cells moving through the area midday, but sometimes it's good to look at why this is all happening in the first place. And that is because of this storm. So you can see as we go through tomorrow morning, this storm deepens offshore. It gets down to about 978 millibars, pretty respectable, then starts to weaken rapidly and fill in as it moves toward the coast, but still casts a strong pressure gradient with a strong pressure rise behind it. So there's definitely, it's really close to this being a very impactful event, to the point of like where this would be a very notable windstorm, but because it's weakening as it moves in instead of strengthening as it moves in, then that makes it a little bit weaker than it could be. If this was strengthening as it moved in, we'd be talking about a huge wind event potentially for a lot of western Washington, and even western Oregon, but because it's weakening as it moves in, it's a little bit more localized, and it's not going to be as strong. So, but regardless of that, we're still looking at 50 plus miles an hour for a lot of areas. So we can compare this to some other forecast models, because then we kind of get to see if there's agreement or not on where this storm comes in. You can see the NAM model is a little bit weaker with it, but it still has it moving into the same spot, then moving up through the strait and then up into British Columbia. Puget Sound Storm Watch says, have you checked the pivotal weather point sounding, seeing some marginal severes for the Seattle area and even marginal tornado on the NAM? Yeah, so the soundings, that's basically a way of looking at the potential for different atmospheric conditions. These are used a lot when we're talking about thunderstorms. I tend to not reference them much in things like this because it takes a very long time to explain them sometimes, the photographs and stuff like that. But basically what Anthony from Puget Sound Stormwatch is saying there is that some of the soundings that are coming back for parts of western Washington are showing the potential for pretty strong thunderstorms. They wouldn't last for very long, but they'd be pretty strong for just a little bit. And you can see, we can look at that here on the high resolution rapid refresh. You can see it shows these big segments going through here. You can see it turns into one big band as it goes into the mountains, but you have these little cells that move through that could be pretty heavy. But what you can't see is that even though it looks like a heavy cell, it will also be a strong thunderstorm. So, and that's not guaranteed. Thunderstorms are one of the hardest things to accurately predict around here. In some cases, and this is kind of crazy to say, in some cases it's harder to predict a thunderstorm in western Washington than lowland snow. We're getting pretty good at trying to sniff out some patterns with lowland snow, but thunderstorms, it's just super hard to predict. I mean, the forecast models can say this, and you can have it be 50 miles different in either direction or something like that. It's getting better, but it's still no guarantee. If we look at, again, we looked at surface cape already, lightning flash density, you can see where those chances of thunderstorms are. So as we go through this is noon, then 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4 5, you can see the highest chance of showing up on the HRRR model is 5 to 6 p.m. Tomorrow, but there's also this chance around at mid-afternoon there. We can take a look at the same thing on the European model, and usually the Euro does pretty good at picking out where some of these thunderstorms are going to be, and you can see it shows some on the coast around 2 to 3 p.m., but it doesn't really show anything in the interior. So there's kind of two camps we're looking at with the forecast models. The European model shows it mainly sticking to the coast and then maybe down briefly around areas from Lewis County southward, but it never makes it into the Puget Sound lowlands, versus what we were looking at just here on the high resolution rapid refresh, where you had a more widespread thunderstorm potential here across parts of the region. Let's see what Anthony was talking about there. Updraft helicity. This is showing that potential for rotating cells. You can see some values there showing up across parts of the Cascades, but this is something that you need it to be stronger than this to really have these show up for the Pacific Northwest. again, our thunderstorms are weak compared to most other areas in the country. They kind of laugh at us for talking about thunderstorms like this at all. But again, you see the CAPE values there. That's the amount of instability in the atmosphere. We looked at the HRRR already. We can take a look at the NAM. The NAM is a lot more on board with big instability across the region there. You can see it showing values of 300 to 900 across the area, mainly peaking from like 2 to 4 p.m. there, maybe toward 5 p.m. before the wind starts to move in there. So let me catch up on the chat here. Yeah, those surface relative helicity values. Puget Sound Stormwatch says, A says, what do you think about AI potential within weather models? I think we have nice potential with it. I think it's something that could definitely help us, but I think right now it's too early to tell if it's not super skillful yet. Like, we have the European model AI forecast system, and it's been doing a little bit better. It's starting to pick up on patterns and stuff, but in terms of like forecasting a storm with the forecast model, it's not great yet. So I think there's a lot of potential with AI forecast models, but I think we've got a long ways to go in getting those really fine-tuned. It's much harder to fine-tune a forecast model running with AI versus something like ChatGPT, where it's giving you type in something and it gives you a response. That's much different than something like a forecast model like this, where you're predicting where this low pressure system is going to make landfall. Having AI predict that is going to be much more difficult. Arrow Rocket Dog says, National Weather Service seems to be relatively conservative with the advisories and warnings they issue. Sometimes I wish they weren't as hesitant or didn't wait as long. We definitely have had some situations where you could have argued that an alert could be issued sooner. We already have these wind advisories up, though, so that's something. And for the coast, you got high wind warnings. I think these are good. They may need to be upgraded a little bit. We do have a gale warning for the inland waters as well, so that's kind of interesting as well. Tofino asks, could the power go out in King County, Snohomish County tomorrow night? And when is the thunder possibilities? I have a big soccer tryout at 5. Thunderstorm potential is really anywhere between noon and 5 to 6 p.m. Then we're going to have that break from like 6 to 8 before those strong winds start to move in. Power outages are definitely possible, but I would say most likely after dark, more like 8 to 9 p.m. onward. The thunderstorm potential, we looked at it on the high-resolution rapid refresh. We can take a look at it again here. Extended run. Let's go to composite reflectivity. So you're looking at Snohomish County, King County line area there. You can see heavy storm moves through around 1 to 2 p.m., brief break 3 to 4, and then you get some really heavy stuff around 5 potentially there. So could be a little bit iffy for your soccer tryout there if you get a kind of complex of heavy cells moving through around 5 to 6 p.m. Then we get a brief break before that next round of heavy rain starts to move in. You can see the swirl in it too off the coast here as that low center moves in, and that's what brings some of those strong winds. Let me take a look at our current wind gusts. Things should be calming down out there. You can see some areas near the water still gusting up to 30 miles an hour or so. 31 miles an hour there at Magnolia area of Seattle. 35 at Painfield. But then you can see most other areas are calming down pretty nice. So that was a pretty brief shot of wind there. A says, I'm not sure if you were here in Issaquah during the November windstorm, but that was really bad. No power for 5 to 6 days. Do you think we get even close to that? No, definitely not. We're not going to have something like that bomb cyclone. That was a very unique event that something like that hasn't happened for quite a while, and it probably won't happen for quite a while. Just the dynamics involved with those easterly winds and the wind through the gaps and mountain waves and everything kind of aligned perfectly for a really bad storm and some bad damage. I was in Issaquah after that storm to see some of the damage. In fact, I can see if I can pull up the video here for you guys, but I don't expect anything like that storm. So here, this actually was my video from Issaquah in that storm. I'm probably going to play an ad. So here, so you can see big power lines down. There's some Canadian power crews actually helping out. There you can see uprooted tree in a parking lot. It was pretty bad in Issaquah. You can see this home had an uprooted tree right next to it. This is actually a pretty good thing to look at here, because while we're not going to have the scale of damage like we did in the bomb cyclone, we will potentially have something like this happening, where you have uprooted trees because of how saturated the ground is. We've had 2 to 4 inches of rain across the area over the last couple of days, and as you can see in this snapshot right here, look at how shallow the roots are on this tree. I mean, this is like a foot. This is a foot deep. So it doesn't take very much really around here to uproot a tree, especially when the ground is wet. So that's something to keep in mind. Sam says, I was in Sammamish for the Hanukkah Eve storm of 2006. This last November was bad, but not even close to 2006. Yeah, I was very young during 2006, but that storm was by far 2006 was the worst storm across Western Washington since the 1993 and 1995 storms, and since 2006 we have not had a storm that was even close to that bad. We had some bad storms. The bomb cyclone was unique and it was bad, but it was not bad region-wide. I mean, Pierce County barely got any impacts at all with the bomb cyclone, whereas parts of King and Snohomish counties got hit really bad, but then just across Puget Sound and Kitsap County, almost nothing happened. So the bomb cyclone was unique in how it was very bad in very localized areas of Western Washington, mainly King and Snohomish counties, and outside of that, it wasn't very bad. So it was a unique storm that caused a lot of damage for some pretty small areas. Brian Rock Railfan asks, is there going to be more landslides? It's possible. I think we have some potential for landslides over the next few days, but we haven't gotten enough rain with this atmospheric river to have the really high landslide threat. I think some of the more landslide prone slopes and stuff like that could have some issues, but this is not a widespread landslide threat with this series of storms. A says their East King County just got hit really hard. Seattle got barely anything. Seattle had a lot of power outages, but besides that, not a huge amount of tree damage like parts of Eastern King County there. Sam said, yeah, those 70-mile-an-hour easterly gusts were pretty gnarly. It was really significant to see those easterly winds and see how far west they got over Puget Sound. I mean, I had just on my home weather station on my house 45-mile-an-hour gusts in Federal Way, and I know it was stronger than that. So that was one of the strongest easterly windstorms in decades for Western Washington. There's not really a storm to compare to that unless you go back like 20 years or so. But no, this upcoming storm has nothing on the bomb cyclone. That was an extreme event that will definitely go down as the biggest weather event. I would argue for some places, some small areas of Western Washington, that was the biggest weather event since the great heat wave of 2021. But again, it was really, really localized. So we can take a look. I think looks like the latest GFS model is running right now. We can see kind of what it shows. We can compare it to the previous run of the GFS model. So you can see the latest run is on the left. The previous run before that is on the right here. So as we go into tomorrow, this is tomorrow evening, and you can see, for some reason it doesn't like that, so we're just going to look at the latest run that's going right now. That's the GFS has this storm weaken a ton before moving across the Puget Sound area, and you can see it has winds gusting up to 55 miles per hour potentially for the Willamette Valley and areas from Tacoma southward. But the GFS model is not known for getting wind super accurate. It has one of the lowest resolutions of any forecast model. It's possible. It's possible. Remember here that there could be an area of a sharp cutoff on the north side of where the winds are. There could be some areas that get a lot of wind from like Tacoma southward, and then just north of that there could be not much. So the GFS does show the potential that the storm comes in and weakens really quickly, like even quicker than the European is showing, producing much less wind for the Seattle area and more wind for the Willamette Valley. One thing of note, the GFS has this storm make landfall closer to Claylock and stuff like that versus up toward southern Vancouver Island here. So there, in that difference, it casts the strongest gradient and the strongest winds more toward the Willamette Valley than the Puget Sound area. So just something to keep in mind. Let me catch up on the chat here. Puget Sound Stormwatch says November 11th, 2014 was significant. That actually was the event that got me interested in weather almost 11 years ago now. So just over 10 years ago. The November 11th, 2014 East Wind event. My house in Federal Way lost power for 2.5 days, and that is the event that got me interested in weather. Brian Sandwick says, do you think snow is done for the season? For the lowlands, most likely getting any snow after this time of year is pretty hard to do. I mean, I believe it's 2018, about February 24th or 26th, we had 4 inches. But that's pretty rare. In March, sometimes you have to get a very, very good setup to get a lot of snow in March. It's happened before, but it's very rare. Origami, solar moon, what about the Inauguration Day storm? One of the top 3 strongest storms in Pacific Northwest history, rivaling the Hanukkah Eve and only second to the Columbus Day storm. Really, the Inauguration Day was an extraordinary storm. A says, I'm hoping we can get something snow-related in March, but looks unlikely. The biggest thing that's working against that is the power of the sun. As we get closer and closer to the summer solstice, the sun's power gets higher and higher. We get more solar radiation that makes it harder for it to be cold and makes it harder for us to get snow. Sam says, a couple of Novembers back, we had a savage 70-mile-an-hour westerly surge in South Snohomish County. That was pretty bad, too. I believe that was November 2021. Whidbey Island got 70 miles an hour. That extended into parts of Snohomish County. That was one of the stronger westerly surges in a long time. We haven't had one that strong since then, I believe. Octavia says, getting a good bit of wind right now in Northgate. Yeah, there's still some areas of gusty winds out there, but it is overall diminishing. Brian Rock Railfan says, grain train hit mudslide near Tacoma. Can you provide a little bit more information about that? If that happened, I want to be able to take a look at it and show you guys. Zach says, will winds be easterly tomorrow? That's why this past November was so bad. No, Zach, this will be more of a southwesterly wind event. So a typical wind direction, just stronger than your garden variety storm. You can see the European model kind of shows this. It's southerly winds. It's not based on the gaps, but it's stronger than usual in the sense of Seattle gusting close to 55 miles per hour and stuff like that. So no easterly winds with this storm. Let's see. Sam says Sammamish, April 20th, 2008 had 4 to 6 inches of snow randomly fall. That sounds like a convergence zone to me. That's most likely how you can get big amounts of snow at odd times of the year, is a convergence zone. Reflect the Sun says, removing sulfur in 2020 from shipping bunker. Oh, interesting. Yeah, let's keep it mostly weather related here. But that is interesting. It's science, all that kind of science stuff is interesting to see. Let's see. Sydney says that storm in 2021, a tree fell on my house. Yeah, that was pretty bad across parts of Snohomish County and Island County. That was one of the biggest westerly surges in a long time for western Snohomish County, Island County, Camano Island. That was a pretty bad one. If you guys will excuse me, I will just need to take a quick break. I will be back here in about 2 minutes. So just stay tuned here. I'll be back in a couple minutes. All right, folks, I am back here. Let me catch up in the chat. Yeah, November windstorm was pretty rough. Keith says I lost 9 trees November 3rd. That year. It was crazy. 3 miles north of Arlington. Yeah, that westerly surge. That was a big one, that 2021 westerly surge. We can actually, let's see, look back at the historical data for that. We're kind of just waiting here for the next run of the European model. That's going to start in about 20 minutes here. So November 13th, 2021, I believe, was the day of that storm. It might not have been that day. It might have been the, let's see. Anyone correct me on the date of that storm? I do not remember the exact day in 2021. May have been the 14th or the 15th. I think the 15th was. Yeah, we got pretty gusty on the 14th, but I think let's see. November 15th, 2021. Was that it? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so November 15th, 2021, we had not only a strong westerly surge, but we had a big southerly wind event as well. We gusted 55 in Olympia, 55 in Tacoma, 58 at SeaTac. So that was pretty strong. And then we had that westerly surge that evening. And you can see there were some areas, especially up here, Arlington, all that. You can see that Arlington Airport hit 45. That's kind of far inland for those gusts. You can see 61 at Whidbey Naval Air Station, 62 there at Dungeness Spit. And if we go into the next day, I don't know how much it lasted into the 16th. I don't think it lasted much longer. No, it pretty much calmed down. But that was a pretty strong westerly surge there. Let's see. A says the 9th was also interesting in 2021. November 2021 was a very interesting month for weather. We had a massive amount of rain. I got a foot of rain at my house that day, or that month. November 9th, 2021. I don't remember that off the top of my head. That was, the tornado warning in the Kitsap Peninsula there. That was, the tornado warning was mistakenly sent to everyone in King County when it was really right on the border of King County. So that was pretty interesting. Just another day there would gust 40, 45 miles per hour. Brian says it was overnight when a train hit a mudslide in Tacoma. Let me see if there's any news on that. I don't think there is. Don't see any current news on that, but I believe that is possible. Yeah. All right. So let's take a look again at this. Is something I just want to keep watching. Is this this thunderstorm and heavy cell potential there on the high resolution rapid refresh. We've looked at this already, but you can see we have that initial band of heavy rain move through, and then as we get to about 11 to 12 p.m., you have these heavy cells moving through the Seattle Metro by 1 to 2 p.m., and then another round of it moving through 4 to 5 p.m., and then more heavy rain as the main storm moves through into Tuesday morning. That lasts a little bit longer over the Portland Metro before rain should mostly wrap up across anywhere west of the Cascades by the time we get to 2 to 3 p.m. Thursday, Tuesday, then a convergence zone potentially along the Kingston-Snohomish County line out towards Stevens Pass, which could bring another bit of heavy mountain snow out there. But yeah, that's it. By the time we get to about midday Tuesday, showers are going to be wrapping up across the area. Winds will be starting to decrease. Brian asks, how would I find the highest wind gusts ever recorded for a specific city? That's pretty hard to do. It's not as easy as a simple Google search, and I have not been too successful in that either. There is a website where you can look at, let's see if I can find it here. don't know if I actually have it bookmarked or not. There's a website we can like create these like weather tables, and here, let's see if this does wind. I don't know if it does. Let's see, extremes. No, it doesn't do wind. So yeah, no, we can't just do this. We can't just look at wind. But since we were talking about November 2021, we can see that was, you can see November 2021 there, 9th most rain all time in a month for SeaTac Airport at 10.26 inches. But those of you living north in up north in Bellingham remember the extreme rain of November 2021. Number one rainiest month in Bellingham history, 14.5 inches of rain. Let's see. Brian Rock says on Chehalis, Washington live rail cam, it shows a train struck mudslide. Maybe not. Tim H says December 2018 was the tornado that dropped 17 trees over the house I had just moved out of in Port Orchard. That was a crazy event, that Port Orchard tornado. Let's take a look at the Chehalis, Washington live rail cam. I don't know if, is this live? Let's see. I don't know if this is live or not. It looks like it is actually. It's pretty quiet. Maybe there's a train coming. Doesn't look like there's information about that landslide. I hope there wasn't any landslide going on. There's a train coming. That's kind of fun. That's kind of fun. Let's see. Reflect the Sun says we were caught in the May 4th, 2017 microburst in Lacey, Washington. That was May 4th, 2017 was a crazy weather day. Just that one sticks out in the minds of a lot of weather folks across Western Washington. That was we had a severe thunderstorm risk across Western Washington on May 4th, 2017. And that was, I saw a cloud to ground lightning strike in Puyallup that day. Let's see, we're talking about the Port Orchard tornado. Was that an EF2 AS? Let's take a look at. There should be, I think there's a Wikipedia article about it here. Yeah, it was an EF2 tornado, 120 to 130 mile per hour winds. 5 minutes is all it lasted. It caused $18 million. This was a photo of some of the damage. I mean, that is obviously tornado damage. This is something interesting to note. This storm was the product of something called the Olympic Mountain Velocity Shear Zone, which is a meteorological phenomenon that occurs when incoming onshore flow in the wake of a cold front from the Pacific Ocean is forced around the Olympic Mountains and adds to the low-level wind shear that can enhance rotating storms moving through the area. Velocity scans show that this storm had rotation to about 10,000 feet in the atmosphere, and rotation could be seen by the coastal Langley Hill radar and the Camano Island radar. So this is a very interesting tornado. Approximately 250 homes were damaged, including a few that had their roofs partially or completely ripped off. Many large trees were snapped. Several homes were severely damaged when trees fell into them. Some of the most intense damage was inflicted to a dry storage facility, which sustained roof loss and collapse of walls. A strip mall sustained considerable damage as well. About 20 homes were initially evacuated because of fears of a gas leak. This was a one of the strongest tornadoes in Washington in quite a long time. The 12th recorded EF2 tornado to touch down in Washington State overall since 1950. So yeah, EF2 there. That was pretty significant. We're getting close to the European model running. If you guys want to stay on here to see the European model, give its forecast for the upcoming storm. That'll probably be in by about 9:25, so about 25 minutes from now. That European model forecast will come in. We can look, in the meantime, we can take a look at some of the extended forecasts and see what we're looking at over the next few days to weeks here. So this is a Climate Prediction Center, National Weather Service Climate Prediction Center here. March 1st to 5th, temperature outlook. You can see slightly above average signal showing up near normal precipitation. Look at the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook, though it looks like we may get a little bit colder March 3rd to 9th. So as we go into the middle of March, potentially we get those maybe slightly cooler temperatures, but potentially below average precipitation. 3 to 4 week outlooks for the overall for the month of March, slightly below average, like very slightly, and above average precipitation. That's reflected in that 1 month outlook. So this still shows that kind of La Nina signal there. So this is showing that La Nina is still impacting us. It brings the potential for, as you can see here, a chillier than normal spring. So you can see this is the March, April, May 2025 temperature and precipitation outlooks. You can see below average temperatures and above average precipitation likely through May. And that is a very typical La Nina signature with a cooler than normal spring. We've seen that in for the last few years. So we're going to have to watch that closely. You can see the hazards outlook doesn't really show anything significant over the next few days. So yeah, it also a drought monitor here. You can see we've been below average in terms of our precipitation for a while. You can see the U.S. drought monitor shows moderate drought across parts of western Washington, or abnormally dry. Maybe once some of this rain that we've gotten gets updated in the system there, we'll reduce that drought monitor a little bit. Here's to hoping. We don't want to enter what's likely going to be a drier summer with drought there. So we can take a look here also at El Nino and La Nina. You know, it's always something to watch. You can see we have the La Nina signature right here with that chillier than average water across parts of the Central Pacific Ocean, but that's not going to last. So as we look at this here is published every week, and it's basically this big summary of all this information about La Nina. You can see here La Nina is still going on, but it's not super strong. It was supposed to be a little bit stronger and ended up being just a very weak La Nina. So here's what we're looking at. You can see chances for La Nina rapidly decrease by the time we get to spring. We're going to basically have more neutral conditions there. And then as we go into next fall, it's kind of anybody's guess. You can see there's about the same chance there, about 40 to 50% chance, or 30 to 40% chance, of La Nina or neutral, and a slight chance of El Nino as well. So going into next fall and next storm season, kind of anyone's guess at this point. By the time we get to this summer, we should have a much better idea of what the upcoming storm system or upcoming storm season will look like. These forecasts are basically the ensemble forecasts we look at for the rain, wind, and snow and all that, but looking at sea surface temperature anomalies, which shows the potential for El Nino or La Nina. And this seems to suggest we will get to neutral for this summer, but potentially dip a tiny bit back toward La Nina for next storm season. Obviously, but then you have a different thing on the American CFS forecast system, which shows us hedging a little bit toward El Nino. So, again, these are basically completely disagreeing with each other. So, it's basically anyone's guess at this point if we go El Nino, if we go La Nina. We'll know a lot more about that by the time we get to this summer. And I'm sure we'll talk about it more at times this summer, as when we have more boring weather. That's always a good thing to talk about. So, Yeah. Let's take a look. Let me catch up on the chat here. Kelly Hamilton says, I'm in to stay up for the next run. Awesome. We will do that. Let's see. Arrow Rocket Dog says, it says on the ticker on the Steel Highway rail cams in Chehalis that a train is stuck in a mudslide at the Nelson Bennett Tunnel. Where is that? That's the question. Oh, is that the Point Defiance Tunnel? Oh, okay. So, for those of you who are not from Tacoma, the Point Defiance Railway Tunnel basically runs under under the Ruston neighborhood. So it goes from Point Ruston here under the North Tacoma streets there, and then comes back out near the Narrows Bridge. So, yeah, Amtrak does not use that area. So that would mean that there is a mudslide somewhere, probably not by Ruston, because that probably would have been reported, but maybe somewhere up here along Puget Sound, right where the trains go into the tunnel there. If we look at the terrain map, you can see that it's kind of steep right there. So yeah, that's definitely possible right along here. This is something very similar to what we have with the as we call it, the North Line up here, the North Line, the Sounder, as it snakes along Puget Sound from Seattle up through Edmonds and by Carkeek Park and all that, all the way up toward Mukilteo. You get landslide issues up there between Mukilteo and Seattle as well. So I guess the same thing must be happening down there toward Tacoma. That's interesting. What does La Nina Spring look like? Thunderstorm potential? Maybe, but La Nina Springs are typically defined by it basically being a cold spring with more rain, cooler temperatures, harder to get those nice weeks of like 60, 70 degree temperatures. So that's kind of what your typical La Nina spring looks like. I've seen some La Nina springs in the recent past where we got almost 4 inches of rain in May. So it kind of is just an extension of, in some cases, like February, like rain, where you just get like the month average, like 3 to 4 inches, and that just continues through April and kind of into May, and then sometimes even into June. So yeah, that's kind of what La Nina spring is. Permanent El Nino in the northern hemisphere mid-latitudes. I don't necessarily think that's the case because, I mean, we're in La Nina right now. Those sea surface temperatures are below average. So, I mean, we could have, there's an argument to be made that since obviously the climate is starting to tick warmer, the sea surface temperatures are ticking warmer, that a La Nina now may not necessarily have the same impact as a La Nina 50 years ago. That, I think that's been proven, but that doesn't mean we cannot still have La Nina conditions. So, like, where temperatures are colder than average. Octavia says, it's still very windy at my house. Is that supposed to continue? I think Octavia said she's up in North Seattle. Let's take a look at the current wind gusts. So let's go back to latest and wind gust there. You can see we've still got some gusts, 30 to 35 miles per hour there across areas from Discovery Park up toward Shoreline and over toward Kenmore. That will maybe continue for the next hour or two, but it looks like it's just most areas are just breezy. You can see 29 miles an hour there at SeaTac right now. I would say that will diminish over the next over the next hour or two here. 36 miles an hour still up at Painfield, but that shouldn't be too significant. Maybe a few big gusts, but not too significant. They reflect the sun says, so 50 mile an hour winds will likely see trees down and power outages for the South Sound. It's very possible that we'll have a decent amount of power outages and some trees down. The main reason for that is the amount of rain that we've had over the last 48 hours or so. So we can do 48-hour totals. We can go back to do 72-hour totals. If we look at rain, basically over the last 3 days, the Puget Sound area in 3 days only has had 1.5, 1.6 inches, maybe up toward 2 inches. And keep in mind, we have another like half inch to an inch coming tomorrow ahead of that strong wind. So that is why we're talking about that potential for downed trees, because the ground is really wet. And when you get winds 50 plus miles an hour in the Puget Sound lowlands anyway, then you get a chance of strong winds bringing down trees. As we go further south, you can see that down toward Portland, they've also gotten a pretty good amount of rain. You can see Vancouver, Washington, Portland, Oregon, 1.5 to 2 inches of rain. The coasts have gotten even more. You can see 2 inches in Astoria, 2.8 inches in Long Beach, 3 inches up toward Ocean Shores. And then as you go up the Olympic Peninsula, you can see even more rain there. The south slopes of the Olympics get the most rain in an atmospheric river, getting 4 to 5 inches. And then you can see up toward Bellingham, you can see the rain shadow, how it kind of, you get only a half inch there over the last 3 days down by Sequim versus 2 inches over there by Arlington. And you can see San Juan's getting under an inch, about an inch in Bellingham. But then you can see where the atmospheric river kind of gets wrung out over the mountains with that orographic lift that causes a precipitation. You're getting up toward 5.9 inches near Mount Baker. So that's pretty interesting. Let's see. Mark Skelton says, how much rain in tomorrow's storm? Well, we can take a look at that. We look at the European model. We can see total rain through 10 p.m. Tuesday. And you can see southern BC likely getting 1 to 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches near some parts of Vancouver there. 2 inches near the coast as well. Western Washington likely getting another inch. Potentially 2 inches or 1.5 to 2 inches from Tacoma southward through Portland, and then along the coast there 1.5 to 2 inches. Pardon me for just a second. I have to plug in my computer so I don't lose battery here. If we look at some of the high-resolution models, we can get another view of how much rain we're expecting over the next couple of days. Let's see the high-resolution rapid refresh. We put this all the way out there Tuesday evening. You can see it shows about the same thing, a little bit less rain, more like in 3/4 of an inch to an inch, maybe some isolated locations under heavy showers getting up to 1.5 inches of rain. This will bring our totals to basically 2 to 4 inches across Western Washington, which is more than enough to have decent enough wind damage with the saturated ground. So, also, folks, we're like under 5 minutes from when the European model starts running, so that's exciting. Take a check again on the radar. You can see some of these showers. They're very interesting little lines of showers, which is pretty cool to watch there. You can see some of those are starting to move into the lowlands a little bit. Could be some very brief heavy rain under some of those. Take a look at it here on radar scope. You can see there's some moderate rain maybe. Some of these could be moving toward me here in Federal Way. Toward DuPont and Fox Island, Harstine Island, Key Peninsula. They're nothing too significant, just a little bit more rain here. These showers overall will wrap up by the time we get to early tomorrow morning, and we'll be dry for a couple hours actually, but that's not going to last for too long. Brian Rock Railfan says the landslide was between the two tunnels. Okay, interesting. So inside Rust Park, no, not necessarily. So Seahawk showers again, the colors, yeah, blue and green are the more common colors on radar. Once you get up toward orange and red, that's when you're dealing with the real good stuff, as in very heavy rain, thunderstorms, and stuff like that. Yeah, so we can take a look again. Let's see if are there any models we haven't looked at yet in terms of wind. We can look at the German model. It's kind of interesting with wind sometimes. Actually, if we zoom out, we can look at use the German model to see where the low pressure center moves in here. So the icon, this is the German model. It shows this storm. It's got this kind of weird solution so this is what you call an outlier, because we've looked at all of these forecasts throughout the live stream here, and you've seen how they all bring the storm right up to the coast and then have it weaken as it moves up the strait and into British Columbia. But watch the German model here. It brings the storm right off the Washington coast, and then it just sits there and weakens and like just goes away. And yes, there's a bit of a pressure gradient, but not that much. So I would say that is an outlier because there's not really any other forecasts that are showing that. For example, you look at the NAM model and it shows the storm weakening offshore but then moving inland and then weakening more as it moves into BC versus it just sitting offshore and weakening. So that I don't think is going to happen. Mark says, why are they saying chance of thunderstorms tomorrow and a chance of a mini tornado? Well, that's because of some of the dynamics that play in the atmosphere. You have a lot of wind shear, you have a decent amount of instability. The ingredients for a Pacific Northwest tornado are very, very refined, and I would say that there is a chance, but a somewhat low chance of a tornado. If there's going to be a tornado, or I would say more likely a funnel cloud, if you were to see a funnel cloud or potentially a tornado, the best places to do that would be southeast Washington, maybe from the Tri-Cities over toward Wenatchee, slight chance there, and then a slight chance in kind of the tornado capital of western Washington, which is Clark County, up toward parts of Cowlitz County. That includes also parts of the Portland Metro over towards St. Helens, Oregon. Has another potential of seeing a tornado. Up toward the Puget Sound lowlands, you're looking at more of a thunderstorm potential, like heavy cell moves through, has some lightning strikes, has some small hail, has some really strong winds in it, and a couple rumbles of thunder, but not necessarily a tornado. You may have some very, very brief rotation across parts of western Washington in some of those strong cells, but I don't anticipate something that will be a full-on, like, tornado touching the ground and stuff like that. And if so, it will be extremely, extremely brief and likely not very damaging unless we have a really rare case kind of happen. So let's go back to the European model here. And it looks like the 0Z European model is now starting. So we're out to 2 hours out. So, yeah, we're just going to let this run through. We'll probably stream for another 20 or so minutes as we let the European model run through, and then we'll wrap it up. And, of course, you'll be able to find more in my video tomorrow morning. Again, for everybody watching, be sure to like and subscribe. Subscribing would be awesome. That's the best way to help Western Washington weather grow. Let's see. A says the HRDPS did pretty good today with today's wind. Yes, so the HRDPS is the high-resolution Canadian model. We looked at this earlier, and it shows a decent wind event for parts of Western Washington. So you can see that the HRDPS, it shows this extremely strong wind on the Washington coast and the southern Oregon coast. So basically, the central Oregon coast, basically Newport, Oregon area, northward up toward Ocean Shores, has gusts of 65 to 75 miles per hour. With this forecast showing areas from Westport down toward Lincoln City and a little bit further south of there, with the potential for gusts near 80 miles per hour. I don't really think that's going to happen. I think that's on the higher end of the potentials, but it's a low chance, and you can see inland areas like Raymond and Astoria and Hoquiam gusting 65 to 75 miles per hour. Again, I think likely a little bit too high. And then this forecast shows the Puget Sound lowlands gusting 45 to 55 miles per hour, with areas from kind of Seattle up toward Everett, the northern Kitsap Peninsula, up Whidbey Island, through the Admiralty Inlet area up toward the San Juans and Bellingham, gusting 55 to 60 miles per hour. That's higher than most other forecasts are showing these areas. So while this is another potential scenario, it is a little bit of an outlier, but again, we'll see. Thank you, Brian Rock Rail Fan, for tuning in. Great to have you here in the chat. So this is what we do when we're watching a forecast model come in. You just keep refreshing it. So you can see, get to frame 6 here on the European model, and it's starting to show our storm offshore here late tonight. We can compare it to the previous run, and it almost looks exactly the same at this point. We can actually, let's see if we can do this, if we can see the storm starting to form right now. Let's do this. All right, we're looking at mid-level water vapor. Yeah, you can see it's starting to form down here. It's a little bit further offshore. This area generally is going to be where the storm forms. It's going to move up basically straight toward the tip of the Olympic Peninsula there, and that's by tomorrow afternoon. We should have a very cool satellite image with a nice storm right offshore here moving toward the Olympic Peninsula and southern Vancouver Island. Tim HS, what exactly is the HRDPS? Not sure, I have seen that previously. So the HRDPS is the highest resolution version of the Canadian model. So the Canadian model has 3 different runs. It has the GEM model, which is it goes out the farthest into the extended forecast. It has the RDPS, which is kind of mid-range resolution, and then it has the HRDPS, which is the highest resolution version. So this is basically an analog to like the NAM and the HRRR models that we use frequently. Sometimes we use this forecast. It actually does very good with cloud cover forecasts sometimes. Oddly enough, it's kind of a random thing. Puget Sound Stormwatch says the Baroclinic leaf stage. Yeah, that's kind of what we're in right now, where this storm is starting to develop. It's called Baroclinic leaf, where it's starting to form. It's always fun to watch storms form on the satellite and then see them come closer to you. And let's keep refreshing the European model here. You can see as it jumps forward to about 3 a.m., you can see the storm forming there even more. The best thing to do when you're watching a forecast model run is to compare it to the previous run. And you can see right now, they're like almost exactly the same. There's barely any difference here. It's a slightly weaker here, like by like 1 millibar. So not much of a difference between the 0Z and the 18Z. Arrow Rocket Dog says the red wind swath on the Kingston-Homish County line is interesting on the HRDPS. Yeah, it is. We'll see if that happens or not. That's 55, 60 miles per hour north of Seattle by Everett. Again, just one of a few different possibilities. Compare this to the HRRR's forecast. You can see the HRRR has that strongest wind shunted a little bit further south. You can see stronger winds over the Willamette Valley on the HRRR and stronger winds areas from like Kelso up towards Seattle on the HRRR versus on the high-resolution Canadian, where the strongest winds are from Seattle up toward Victoria, British Columbia. So Nadia says, what about up in Sammamish? Sammamish likely looking gusts, I would say 40 to 50 miles per hour, maybe up toward 55 miles per hour in stronger scenario. The HRRR has gusts of 50 to 55 for the eastern lowlands, including Sammamish, Issaquah, Enumclaw, all that out there. So let's see, we can keep refreshing the European model. You can see the storm forming there offshore, getting down to 977 millibars. Couple millibars weaker than the previous run, which is kind of the setup we've been seeing. It's been weaker overall, which means that it comes in with a little bit more strength. It's not weakening as much as it comes in. So it's just kind of interesting to watch all of these different simulations of this storm. I will say there's definitely still the potential that this storm could underperform or it could overperform. So both potentials are there. I know we have been burned in the past by some windstorm forecasts that have not gone according to the plan, specifically that 2016 Ides of October storm. That's one for the books in terms of biggest busts of weather forecasting in the Pacific Northwest. Keith says, what about Bellingham? Bellingham is a really interesting forecast with this storm because the way the low pressure center is going to be weakening as it hits the Strait of Juan de Fuca and moving inland has the low move right over Bellingham and parts of southern British Columbia, which decreases the wind because the wind is strongest from areas south of the low pressure center. And when the low pressure center is basically over you, it is difficult to get the strongest winds. So I would say for Bellingham, 40 to 45 miles per hour, maybe up to 50 miles per hour. In the highest end scenario, Bellingham gets up toward 55. So nothing that Bellingham hasn't seen already this winter. Multiple 60 mile per hour gusts in Bellingham this winter, I believe. A asks, what satellite websites would you use to track this? My favorite is the College of DuPage satellite. So I'll type that here in the chat. College of DuPage weather. Yeah. Pretty good place for satellite. Peterstown Stormwatch says, except for within the Stingjet. Yeah, that's something to point out. So we kind of see it on the HRRR, and I talked about this in that windstorm that nearly hit us back in December, right around Christmas. So the Stingjet is that area to the south of the low pressure system that has the strongest pressure gradient and the strongest winds. And in this storm, because it's weakening, that it's kind of messy and it's not it's not as strong as it could be in some other scenarios. But you can see this area of enhanced winds offshore, kind of here, this brown color in the winds. That's the Stingjet, which is also known as the bent back occlusion. You've probably heard that term before. It's basically an area of strong winds to the south of the storm that brings this. It has this just straight onshore wind. Often has the highest gusts of anywhere else in the storm. In some of the great windstorms of the past across western Washington, that bent back occlusion or Stingjet has moved directly over parts of the Puget Sound area, bringing very strong winds. In this storm, it's going to be a pretty messy Stingjet or bent back occlusion because the storm's going to be weakening as it moves in, which means that Stingjet's going to be really big and kind of weird. So you can see here, European model trending about the same as it was with the previous run. You can see a pretty strong pressure gradient between Seattle and Portland there, with that low center weakening rapidly as it moves in, but coming in about the same strength. You can see the current run is on the left, the previous run on the right. It's coming in at about the same strength and moves into almost the exact same location. So we're almost to the point where we can look at wind gusts. Let's see. We have wind gusts out to 4 a.m. Tuesday. That should be about once the winds have stopped. So let's look at it. Let's take a look. So here it is, folks. European model. Peak wind gusts on the very latest run. As Michael Snyder likes to say, this is hot off the presses. It's coming in right now, so you can see we'll compare it to the last run, and it looks almost, I would say almost exactly the same. Like there's barely any change here at all. Still showing gusts 50 to 55 miles per hour for most of the Seattle metro area, up toward 55 miles per hour for Whidbey Island, and 40 to 45 there for Bellingham. You can see the only change, it decreased a little bit for some of the coasts there. More towards 60 to 65 miles an hour, 70 plus mile an hour gusts stay offshore. And then you can see Portland about the same as well, 45 to 55 miles per hour for the Willamette Valley. It decreased a tiny bit for Olympia, 51 on the previous run, 48 on this one, but still shows 50 in Tacoma. Both runs show 54 in Seattle, and about the same there at Payne Field, 54 as well. Even Evan Sam there says, what about Bellevue? Same. Both of these European model runs showing about 50 miles per hour for Bellevue, maybe a tad bit stronger. So another thing we can look at here on the European model, precipitation total through, let's play this all the way through about 2 p.m. Tuesday there as precipitation ends. You can see an inch of new rain in Seattle, about the same, 0.8 inches for Bellingham, up to 1.5 inches maybe in some of the foothills. Tacoma gets 1.5 inches. Olympia gets 2 inches. Centralia, Chehalis gets 2 to 2.5 inches there, as some of that heavy rain band is focused right in that area. And then Portland gets 1 to 1.5 inches of new rain there. you can see Puget Sound Storm Watch was talking about it earlier here. The Sting Jet, it's strongest offshore where the storm itself is strongest, and you get those strongest winds. You can see right there where the storm is mature, you have, and we can look at it right here. Where the storm is mature, you got this like 977 millibar low offshore, and you have this super strong bent back occlusion. This is going to help generate some of those big waves that are going to be hitting the coast because you have these huge winds, and then that swell is just going to be pushing toward the Washington coast. But you can see where the storm is most intense, you have this really strong Sting jet bent back occlusion there on the south side of the storm, and then weakens and kind of spreads out as the storm itself weakens and moves inland. So yeah, and that last thing we'll do here before we wrap up this stream, because we've been going for 2 hours now. Thank you everybody for sticking with me here. So this is the European model run, 4 winds. Let's compare it to the high resolution rapid refresh. There we go. So here is the comparison between the two models that have done pretty good with these setups. You can see European model on the left, high resolution rapid refresh on the right. This one is higher resolution here on the right, so it's going to show more terrain features, more localized areas of strong winds. But overall, the high resolution rapid refresh is stronger, shows more of 55 plus for the Seattle metro area. European model shows 50 to 55. But this is either one of these can cause damage, can cause power outages. 50 plus mile an hour winds after 1 to 3 inches of rain is pretty significant. You can see both these forecasts show gusts of 60 plus miles per hour along the Washington and Oregon coasts. Both show gusts of 40 to 45 miles per hour for sure, potentially up toward 50 to 55 miles per hour for the Willamette Valley. Biggest difference on these is kind of areas from Olympia southward to Portland. Between Olympia and Portland, the Euro shows gusts of 40 to 50 miles per hour. The high resolution rapid refresh shows gusts of 50 to 55 miles per hour. So decent difference there. And most of the rest of the area, you can see Seattle Metro again, 50 to 55 on 45 to 55 there on the European, 55 to 60 in some places on the high resolution rapid refresh. So, and then you can see on Whidbey Island there, 50 miles an hour on the high resolution rapid refresh, 50 to 55. Potentially westerly surge trying to hit there about 55 still on the European, and then up toward 55 to maybe some isolated 60 miles an hour across parts of the San Juans. Kelly asks, what is Puyallup winds? I would say Puyallup 45 to 50 miles per hour. High-end scenario up to 55. I doubt Puyallup's going to get up toward 55 miles per hour. Alex says Belfair never gets up to 50 miles per hour. I've been here for 60 years. That's a bit of a sheltered area sometimes. Sometimes you get little terrain features, like if you get a higher mountain kind of around you, that can block the wind a little bit. But some areas just don't get that windy, and sometimes the forecast models, because they can't see every single bit of terrain, they don't always get it exactly right. Since we got the latest European model, let's take a look here at mountain snow. We can just have this play out through Tuesday evening there. You can see Stevens Pass and White Pass. The European model is showing more snow. Actually, a more accurate way to look at this is snow depth change. So, in line with the Weather Service here, this is kind of what they were looking at, I think. 12 to 18 inches of snow. Higher end scenario, you could get up toward 2 feet of snow for Stevens Pass and White Pass. But most likely scenario, Stevens Pass and White Pass, 12 to 18 inches. Snoqualmie Pass, this forecast doesn't have enough resolution to show that the temperature will likely be too high. Maybe high end for Snoqualmie Pass is going to be 4 to 8 inches. I doubt it's going to get more than that. Slight chance of freezing rain, but very, very little. Sleet, that's not happening. So, and then again, precipitation, another inch for most of western Washington. Highest amount of rain going to be between Olympia and Portland. Potential for more saturated ground related power outages in these areas that get the most rain. Yeah, thank you all for tuning in. I really enjoy doing these live streams, getting to just talk about everything that's going on. Stay tuned. Tomorrow morning, I'll have my briefing out as usual, and that will be the last video I do before the storm, before the potential thunderstorms as well, midday. We can actually take a look at that too. We better take a look at that before we end the stream here. You can see as we go through the afternoon, European model shows thunderstorm potential there. Look at that around Portland, Vancouver, Washington. You can see there are parts of Columbia River Gorge. Then you got these up toward the Grace Harbor County. Then look at this, about 4 p.m. close to Tacoma there, and then it just kind of wraps up in terms of the thunderstorm threat. Let's see. Sydney asks, there any timing for peak winds in Arlington? Let's take a look at wind timing for the whole area. So as we go to about 6 p.m., you can see those winds rapidly increasing on the coast. Peak winds for Long Beach and Westport, Ocean Shores, 50 to 60 miles an hour, 65 miles an hour possible. Around 6 to 9 p.m. there, you start to get gusts over 40 miles per hour for Seattle around potentially 10 to 11 p.m. Maybe it could happen earlier, it could happen a little bit later. Then you get those strongest 50-plus mile an hour winds. It's looking like anywhere between midnight to 4 a.m. You can see gusts of 50-plus miles an hour continue along the Washington coast until 5 a.m. Sydney in the chat asked about Arlington. Peak winds for Arlington probably maybe 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. there, maybe continuing to gust 40-plus through 5 to 6 a.m. And you can see actually this European model shows at 7 a.m. Tuesday, winds still gusting 45 miles per hour in Seattle. So that could... that will continue. We'll see. It looks like by the time we get to by 2 p.m., you still have winds potentially gusting up to 40 miles an hour for parts of western Washington before that diminishes fully by the time we get to 6 to 7 p.m. there. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Kirk. Appreciate you joining us as well. Tim H. asks, any plans for another live stream tomorrow afternoon, evening? Maybe I'll do... If it's looking like it's going to be a pretty big storm, maybe I'll do a video. Might do an update video around maybe 6 to 7 p.m. tomorrow. So we'll see. Maybe I'll do that. Yeah, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I really enjoy doing these live streams. I'll definitely do a video tomorrow morning, and I'll be doing updates on all my social media pages. If you don't follow me already, you can follow me on Twitter, on Blue Sky, and follow me on the Western Washington Weather Facebook group on Facebook there. Yep, so I'll do another video tomorrow morning, and then I will potentially do a second video Monday evening. I probably won't do another live stream because I like to, while the wind is going on, be able to like just post updates rapid fire on my social media. So probably won't do a live stream during the storm, but I will, if it's looking pretty big, I'll do or impactful, I'll do maybe another video in the evening tomorrow as well. So thank you, everybody, for watching. Stay safe in the storm. Be prepared for that mountain snow, for the thunderstorm potential, heavy rain, and then, of course, the wind potential into the evening. Stay tuned, and I will talk to you guys all tomorrow.